Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, I'm in New York and I'm excited that we're doing the show in person together. Heidi's dad, my husband, passed away, as many people know, 4 years ago. I did get into another relationship, and I wanted to mention my new book, Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating, for those of you who are looking for love again and want to get into a new relationship, as I was lucky to do. Well, I'm excited about our guest today, Kathleen Rehl, because she's going to talk to us about empowering widows financially. And this is so huge. Not only did I lose my husband 4 years ago, but also I've been trying to help out a friend who is in dire straits recently. So I am so aware of the pitfalls and the difficulties for women and men, of course, and anyone who's lost a partner who they were connected with financially. We've got a person here who not only talks the talk, she's walked the walk, she does research, she counsels, she's been in the financial field for a long time. So this is really going to be a wonderful show.
Yeah. So like you said, Mom, we're going to talk today about empowering widows. And we're going to talk with Kathleen Rehl. And Kathleen is a financial planner who specializes in working with widows and philanthropic planning. After her husband died, she authored the award-winning book, Moving Forward on Your Own, a financial guidebook for widows. She is an adjunct faculty at the American College of Financial Services. Kathleen's work has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and many, many others.
Let's talk about the finances. Well, Kathleen, I was telling you before we started the show that I have a close friend whose husband recently passed away, and she got a hold of me and wanted to borrow money. Now, I thought her husband was very wealthy and very well-to-do. Unfortunately, she was one of the people who totally relied on the partner for all of financial information, and was found to have, he had taken a reverse mortgage on their house and had forged her name. She's confused because she doesn't know what she's getting for retirement. He was retired from the military, so she's got all sorts of retirements, but then she's got a reverse mortgage. I mean, what a heinous thing. Do you hear that often?
That is not uncommon. There are a number of widows that relied on Henry to take care of the money. It was splitting duties. Maybe she was more aware of the household finances and just left hubby up to dealing with it. In fact, I remember one luncheon I attended. It was years and years ago. It was after the book had come out, and I was sitting at a table, and there was two other couples. I was by myself at the table, and the one lady's looking at me. She's looking at me across. Oh, I know you. You're the lady who was in the newspaper on Sunday. The local Tampa Tribune had done a half-page story on the book and about me and about widows and their money issues. She said, I'm never going to have to read that book though, because my husband Ralph, he takes care of everything, don't you, honey?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked over at Ralph, and she looked like she was in her maybe early 70s, and Ralph looked like he was about a decade older than she was. He was on a walker and he was wheezing and heezing. And I thought to myself, you know, what's going to happen is who's going to die first? And she would be in the middle of where is what and how do I begin? And oh my gosh, yes, that does happen.
Well, Kathleen, I'm just wondering how you got into this field. Was it your own personal experience, or were you doing this kind of work prior to becoming a widow?
Yes, I think it's time to tell my story because then it'll make sense.
Yeah.
Change seems to be my mantra. And I started out in the education field. I was a public school teacher. And then I went back to school and got my PhD. And then I was a college professor. And I did that till I got tenure and then said, okay, world, I'm ready for a new challenge out there. And then I entered the nonprofit sector for about 12 years, working with a healthcare foundation and then a social service agency. And at the same time I was at the social service agency, I began getting my credentials to be a certified financial planner, because I was working with donors, attorneys, with their financial planners, with their CPAs, and I wanted to speak the same language that they were speaking in raising these sometimes $1 million gifts for my organizations. So I earned the CFP, but then I decided, I want to sit on the same side of the table as these donors and clients, because they had many interests. They were interested in the arts. They were interested in animal rights. They were interested in religious causes. They were also interested in my healthcare foundation, but I wanted to help them put it all together in a philanthropy package. So I started my own financial planning business, and it was always going to be just a boutique practice, probably about 30 clients or so. And my specialty was working with clergy, because they have some very different financial and tax situations, and surviving spouses and charity. So I had those 3 areas that I was working with. My husband died in 2007. He was diagnosed with cancer in December of the prior year, and before Valentine's Day, he was gone. It was that quick that it happened. It was kidney cancer.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was that fast. Okay. In the meantime, my practice is still working, and it was clergy because he was a pastor. Okay. All right. So I'm working with those 3 areas. I stepped back from my practice for just a little bit, but not very long at all, because you know what? I understood work. Work made sense. When I went into my office and began working on people's financial plans, that was just fine. I was just fine, but it was when everybody went away at night and my house was so empty and I was all by myself, and it would come crashing in that Tom was really gone. He was never going to walk through that front door again. That's what the problem was. By December, I knew I was supposed to write a book for widows about money.
What do you think the major issues are for widows that you're trying
I
to
was wondering that.
help them with?
All right. There are 5 areas. One of the first ones is to go slow, and they can just stop. They don't have to, oh my gosh, I've got to take this action right now. I've got to apply for this benefit right now. Stop. There are 3 stages of widowhood. The first stage is grief, that deep, deep grief that they're in. And it's like shock and awe. Susan Bradley, who's a colleague of mine with Sudden Money Institute, talks about this as a decision-free zone, not a no decision zone, but just anything that doesn't have to be taken care of immediately right now, just wait, just pause until the brain starts functioning. And as you know, in early widowhood, the brain really does function quite differently. A second one is be aware of shysters. There are people out there who take advantage of, who prey on widows. Purpose, on design. I was in a professional meeting many years ago, and sitting around tables, and the guys were talking about how they marketed their financial services. And one fellow said, I have my secretary go through the obits every morning, and we cold call those widows because we know there's going to be money coming in from life insurance and from annuities, and they don't know what to do with it. And he said, we don't get everybody, but we get a lot of clients that way. There are some well-meaning folks, like maybe relatives, who's got a hot tip on where to invest your life insurance money that you're getting. And so be aware of these folks. Another problem is house decisions. There are sometimes a widow will, say, I just can't face. I walk in that living room and there's that big blue chair where Bob used to fall asleep every night, and I know he's never going to be there. And there's just so many memories associated with this house. I can't stand it. I got to leave. I got to go. I got to get out of here. Or a helpful adult child who says, Mom, come and live with me. It'll just be so much better. We can watch out for you. Case in point, I had a client whose son, who lived in Texas, she lived in Florida, wanted her to come and live with them. And in talking with the widow, I said, isn't this the son that you don't get along so well with his wife. And oh, they've talked and it's going to be all right. And we talked, she didn't have any local support system, like her friends. She didn't have any friends in Texas. We talked through and she agreed that she would wait 6 months before making the leap. Well, it's a good thing she did wait, because less than that time, her son got another job in Silicon Valley in California. So he was moving again. So had she
Right.
moved to Texas, even if she had gotten along with the daughter-in-law, which I'm not so sure, it would have been problematic. Then she had to move again to California. It would have been like grief on top of grief on top of grief.
I realized one of the things that I had said for 40 years as a therapist when I worked with bereaved people was that don't do anything for a year. Now, I don't know where that comes from. I did something before a year. My husband had been ill for a while, and I had told him that we had a beautiful house, a kind of a country house in Carmel, California. And I told him if he passed away, I was going to sell the house. So I'd already made that decision. There's some decisions that, I knew I didn't want to keep that house. There's some decisions that you can make that you already know you want to make.
Yes, and you had thoughtfully planned ahead of time, knowing what the future was going to hold.
You said that 70% of people change their investment advisor.
Yes.
That was so interesting because I did exactly that.
Yes. At 1 year, that's kind of a general guideline for
But
some.
therapists love to tell you, just
Yeah.
don't do anything for you.
No, it depends. I had 1 year, it was like 6 months apart. 2 of my clients became widows. It took the first, the younger widow, it did take her about a year from she reached that grief stage to the stage 2, which I call growth. The older woman, because there was anticipatory actions going on, she was ready to move from that grief to growth stage at about 6 months. And at that, when she moved into that stage, then she was ready to do the more traditional kinds of finance, like to look at the finances, because oftentimes the finances that were set up were okay when you were a couple, but when you're a widow and when you're on your own, it's a different scenario. There needs to be updates on her own estate plan, because most likely she's named her dead husband as the executor.
Yeah, and Kathleen, I think the scary part is when women have no idea really what their finances are. They don't know how to access their brokerage accounts. They've left so much up to their husband, assuming maybe that he'll be around forever. And all of a sudden they find themselves having to deal with all of this financially, and they don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And there, I think having a financial professional who is familiar with widow and widow's issues is something that she should consider. Because
how would you suggest, how do people find that somebody who can work with older people?
I was a part of a group called the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And those are all folks who are certified financial planners to begin with. And that is one, like it's the gold standard. Person who is a fee-only comprehensive financial planner is going to look at all aspects together, not just selling a product. It's like, okay, what's in your basket? I've got this annuities, this insurance, this stock. This is going to solve all of your problems. Whereas a comprehensive planner will go in and take a look and say, okay, let's see where your investments are right now. What are your needs for money? What is the money? What's the amount of money coming? I mean, they'll start with what's the amount of money coming in versus the amount of money going out, because there may need to be some changes right there.
Average age of widowhood is
It's actually 59 and a half.
59 and a half. Okay.
That is so young. I was surprised at that. I'm like, wait a minute, what? I thought the average lifespan was what, set in your mid to late 70s? I don't know.
When you take a look, or yes, we seniors, we're dying off too, but the younger men are more likely to die younger, like from accidents. Suicide is a biggie. Oh, and we had a drop in life expectancy during COVID because of people, getting ill, but also that suicide matter. So though, when you factor those items in, that brings the age span down.
Wow.
So
I had just turned 60.
Wow, you were young
Before,
Yeah.
when
when
my
you
husband
became
died.
widow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. See, I was widowed at 81 actually. And my husband happened to be in the finance business, and he was absolutely adamant that we always work together on all the finances, and that we had a team to help us,
Yes.
and that we had
Yes.
an accountant. And
Many financial professionals will just work with one spouse for the couple, and that's often just the guy, oh yeah, let's go
No.
play golf and I'll give you my
I
hot
hear
tip.
it all the time. People saying, I don't know my financial advisor. My husband does all that.
I like what you said early on. You don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah.
But for some people, they have to move pretty quickly because they don't, like my friend, they don't have enough money to live in their house.
Mhm.
They don't have enough money to survive. And I think the very beginning that you've got to do is find somebody who can advise you and be
Another,
careful.
yeah, another site is the NAPA, National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. These are all fee-only folks. They're not selling product. Their charges to work with them will be based either on an hourly rate, or it will be a project rate. There'll be a retainer. It's not on a percentage of assets. So those two groups, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors and the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And actually, the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners is this, they have to have NAPA membership and be CFPs also. So I would look at those.
And people that are certified, don't take your advice from Uncle Joe or
Exactly.
Right.
Jane or
Relatives. I used to,
whatever,
I
or
would-
your
I would-
kids. I hate to say it, or your kids.
I would
It's
train my widows to stand in front of a mirror, and pretend that Uncle Joe has just said, I got this hot stock for you to invest in. You say, thank you very much. Thank you for this suggestion. I will take it into consideration with my financial advisor. Right now, it's way too early in the process for me to make a decision on what we're going to do, but I really appreciate your concern for me, Uncle Frank.
I like that. I like having that little elevator.
Yeah, I do
response.
too. It's awesome.
They'd come back and say, I used that. I said that. How did you know I was going to be approached that way? And I said, because it just happens.
Because they just come out of the woodwork.
Hey, Kathleen, do you have a website?
Yes, it's just my name, KathleenRehl.com. 3 stages of widowhood. We never got to the third stage.
Oh, do you want to give us a third? But give us the 3. Just say
Okay.
1, 2.
The first is grief. The second is growth, when it's more normalized. And the third stage, which not all widows unfortunately get to, but most of us do, it's transformation. I like to
Oh, I like that.
I like to actually call it, I like alliteration, so I call it grace. Go from grief to growth to grace or transformation. And that's when some really exciting things can happen, like new people can come into our life, Gloria, like.
Yep, like my Frank and our.
And I remarried a few years ago. Philanthropy can be a charitable giving can be very, very rewarding, very meaningful for a widow. There are just some lovely things that happen in this stage.
Oh, that's for sure. Well, Kathleen, thanks again for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you maybe at a Soaring Spirits or somewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for all that you do for those that have lost a partner.
Oh, it gives me joy.
And thanks everybody for joining us on the show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe. I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.